Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a tier list for Pool 2 of Marvel Snap. I did just get into Pool 3 myself, so I wanted to make one more video talking about the card strategies and just general decks from Pool 2 before I start just transitioning to Pool 3 content myself. But it's been really fun. I really do like the mini meta that this was, and even though Pool 2 there's not a bunch of cards in it, there are a lot of solid cards for it too, which means there's a lot of solid decks. So we're going to go over 7 decks for this tier list. Nothing too serious here, and also we will have example deck lists for each one. I won't claim that any of these deck lists are the best, but I think they are good deck lists to start going into these kind of archetypes. And again, since just how this game works, a lot of these archetypes are very generic as well, and there's obviously more decks as well too. So don't think this is an end all be all kind of thing. But if you are in Pool 2 and you want to think of some decks that you want to try out, or just some general ideas for the meta for that, I think this is a very good video for that. So we're going to start off with our first one here, and it is going to be the self-destruction here. I think this is fine. Honestly, the issue with this is that there's not really a good top end. There will be in Pool 3, trust me on that, but you don't get a lot of advantage in this one, unfortunately. So I just kind of did the general idea of this is that you have a bunch of effects that proc off your own destruction, such as Squirrel Girl, being able to put some stuff out, and then you can use a Carnage to eat one of the squirrels, and then you use that Carnage destruction effect to bring an Angel out of your deck. And that's kind of just how that works. So you get that. Nova's a really good card as well, being able to pump everything by 1 for getting that deletion there, and just kind of everything else. So I think it's strong. I think it helps out. Like if you have a wide board, it's good. And the only thing that's wrong with it is that it's like a weird duality where you want to have a really wide board so you get a bunch of buffs for things, but also at the same time it's kind of rough for that. So because you're going to do a lot of self-destruction at the same time. So I honestly think for this pool, it's more of like a mini engine if you want to put it into a deck. Otherwise, they're just missing out, I think, on something on the top end or some more consistency. Unfortunately, it kind of stinks. Bucky is probably the best card you get for it, though. Being able to just to get this on destruction effect to get into the Winter Soldier, that's pretty strong there. So Carnage, and that makes it pretty like a 2-card combo to, or even like a Deathlock too. Pretty much both the same thing, where you have a pretty contested lock on one location and just kind of go from there. So I don't have a lot of experience with this deck. I always draw my Angels, so I always have a bad time with it. But I don't think it's super strong. I think it's going to get way better in Pool 3. But I do think it's worth mentioning and talking about that. Talking about a deck that's going to get better later as well, we do have the discard deck. And this is okay. The only thing is that it has a lot of RNG associated with it. Being able to discard a bunch of cards like Apocalypse, being able to discard the card and make it like a a 6/16 or something crazy like that at the end of the game, cool. Otherwise, you kind of just have a hard time getting the cards that you want consistently off of it, and that's kind of why it can probably be higher on the list if you see everything that you need to see and you get everything right. But it's just so tricky to do that, and just the fact that the discards you get aren't really worth it half the time unless you only hit Apocalypse or anything that wants to be hit, because sometimes you just hit stuff that you don't want to get hit, and you have a bad time because of it. So that's just something to consider there. But Morbius does get some benefits if you keep doing this. There are some locations that help you discard more or just have more cards in your hand, so you do get those discards. Swarm is kind of nice too. Wolverine is a free play if you discard it, and then obviously Apocalypse there. America Chavez is great in this deck because if you just discard your entire hand, you still have a guaranteed good play on turn 6 with it, so that's kind of nice. And then Hobgoblin is probably one of the best cards in the set. Like it's so good at disruption and giving your opponent like a -8 like that. It's really good. And there's so many locations that Hobgoblin just wins you the game by playing it on it, or wins you the location at least because of kind of how he works and everything else like that. So I think this is fine. I don't think, even though I'm putting in tier 3, I don't think you can climb with it. I just think that there's a lot of RNG specifically for this deck based on how discarding worked. And if you could choose how you discard, which I don't think you ever will be able to, just based on how the client works and everything else with this card game, it just lends on using RNG to take away decisions. that I think more like this card is just fine. Again, I think there's some pool all these decks. I'm gonna say it for all these decks are pretty much gonna get some buffs in pool 3 anyways. But I do like this. It's just a little bit too RNG heavy for me there. Next up, we do have Kazoo right here, and it's pretty. This is probably like the best pool 1 list, and so you're probably going to see a bunch of people still playing this list in pool 2. A couple good 1-drops we get, like Iceman is kind of nice, and some others, but it's just still solid. It still has some good things. The biggest thing about it, though, is that there is a lot of potential counterplay. If you've seen Killmonger in pool 2, it is probably one of the best cards in pool 2. It just wins you games outright. It is so strong, and I love being able to run him. I just like so many decks that I play in pool 2 simply just have Nova as one of my 1-drops, and then Killmonger as one of my 3-drops, because it just can swing the game in your advantage a lot of the time. Worst case, you hit like your own Nova, and then it just becomes a 3/4, so you only lose like 1 power, but your opponent might lose 4, 5, 6 power, and I think that's very strong. Other than that, I think this is just pretty generic. You add armor for this, though. You definitely want to use armor in this list, because if you're playing like a big stack of 1-drops in one area, you do want that protection for it to help them not get Killmongered, and I think that helps there. But I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I think it's very quote unquote cheap, because most of these are still pool 1 cards. If you are able to get an Iceman and you want to play a deck with it, I think this is probably one of the best ones for it. There's this one's still a little open-ended for what you want to do with it too, and there is room for some tech cards if you want to as well. But yeah, it's pretty basic. I'd say it's a solid deck for the tier. And then next up we do have, I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to play the Jubilee. This deck can be played in a lot of ways, and it strictly does get better in pool 3. I have seen it. This is obviously a super RNG deck, but I do really like what it does for it. And you can kind of tailor your RNG for what you want to do with it as well. This one is also with the Infinaut. If you want to make the Infinaut its own tier, it's probably going to be in tier 2 as well anyways. I think there are some really good ways. Like sometimes you just win the game on the spot, which is nice. It is very RNG like the discard, but like discard, like you use RNG to have an advantage. Like with Infinaut, you have RNG just to win on the spot sometimes, which is very strong. So pretty much how this deck works is that you run Quicksilver and Domino because you want a turn 1 and turn 2 play, but you also want to guarantee that your deck is pretty much full of good cards, so you can use Jubilee with them. Then you do have like Sunspot if you want to run something else for it and guarantee that you don't pull a 3 or less, or a 2 or 1-drop off Jubilee. Get something else, but he is really nice. And for Infinaut variants, where if you're not doing anything turn 5, it becomes a 1/6 if you didn't pass any other energy throughout the turn. So super solid. And then Storm is another pool 2 card that I think helps this deck out a lot. Being able to, Quicksilver, Domino, Storm, and then Jessica Jones or Warpath, you've just pretty much locked down a location with like 16 power. You pass the turn, and then you play the Infinaut, and then you win on that, another location there. Really easy to do, really solid. And then sometimes you don't see the Infinaut, but then you get like America Chavez on turn 6 anyways, so you can play a 5-drop like Hobgoblin again or Panther, and you get some big bonus from there. And then obviously if you hit Odin off Jubilee, or you just play Odin where the Jubilee is, you get a bunch of benefits from there. Being able to play another card is pretty solid. You do pretty much have to play Jubilee in an empty location, go from there, and it's very strong. The only issue with this deck is there's some RNG in what you hit with your stuff. You really only try to win 2 locations. You just go big on 2 locations. So if your opponent's able to go big on 1 location and then kind of small on 2 other locations, they usually win. Since you don't have as much location presence, you just make really big boards. And then also Shang-Chi is also in this meta in pool 2, so you have to be careful on whose turn is going first, turn 6, and a bunch of other things. But that's kind of why Storm is kind of nice, because you're able to lock down a location, and then you can use the Infinaut as well. But I'd say this is probably one of the most open-ended lists for this meta. You can really make it as you want, and it can again be an Infinaut list instead of a Jubilee list. I know all these are just up in the air. There's since you can only run one of each of these Marvel heroes anyways, it's hard to like give a deck a hero or claim for it. But I think this is a Jubilee list, and again, there's some more tools that are coming out of set pool 3 as well to look out for, and I think that will be excellent. extra strong. Next up, we are going into our tier 1. And honestly, if you want to put Jubilee in tier 1, I wouldn't blame you. But I think the RNG just holds it back a little bit. But we do have tier 1. We do have these ongoing. And this one, I will say this one's pretty open-ended too from Jubilee. This is really just the list that I ran last pool or last season and got to 80 with it. And with it being my first season, and I only played it for like 2 weeks instead of the 4 weeks, I am pretty sure I could have gone to Infinaut if I had another week or two to play with it. But this deck was super duper strong. This is also just like a really anti-meta version of the list, but I felt like most games I could really win with this, which is really strong. The idea with this is that you just play some obnoxious one drops, so like Nova or Iceman, and then you can use Angela. Angela is probably one of the best cards in the game still. This just kind of helps you guarantee a location more times than not, and you just put cards on top of there. And then you just have a bunch of ongoing effects like Armor, Colossus, Lizard, Mr. Fantastic, and then you just have Blue Marvel and Spectrum as well. So being able to just play a bunch of bodies on the board and go kind of wide with it, and then use Blue Marvel, and then use Spectrum to do the +2 boost there. You do have room for some interaction, so I'm running both Killmonger and Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi might not be needed, but the last time I ran this was when there were a bunch of Devil's Dinosaur deck lists going around, which spoilers might also be on this deck list, or this tier list. So I think it's warranted, but if you want something else, that's fine. And I do like White Queen in this deck too, just being able to draw a card if we don't have a turn 5 or turn 6 play from our opponent's hand, and kind of just know what they're playing or what their probable turn 5 or 6 play is going to be, lets us know ahead of time if we think we're going to win or where you think we're going to lose that. So very strong list in general. It's, again, my favorite list for climbing this season, or that previous season, and it's I think it's very strong. So next up we have the movement list, and I don't have much experience on this besides just losing to it a bunch of times. It's probably... You do have to put in a lot of brain power. I'd say like this was the thinker of a list sometimes. You have to really prioritize which locations you want to go to, which ones you think are going to be good, and just pretty much everything else that goes with it. But there's just a lot of strong abilities and like cute little one-card combos with this that pretty much revolve on using multiple man. Multiple man is such a good card in this. Just being able to double up your power a lot of times, and then inherently, if it has more power and you move it somewhere, then it keeps that power boost. So you can use something like Forged and then play multiple man to make it a 2/5, and then use like Doctor Strange to move it, and then you have 2 2/5s and Doctor Strange as well. So that's really strong. I think that helps you for what you're doing. Iron Fist is also a really good card, so you could do Forge into multiple man into Iron Fist. No, Iron Fist. Okay, that combo is weird. You can't do that combo, but. I think there's just a bunch of good things that go with it. New cards are Vulture, Cloak, as well as I think Craven was pool too. I can't recall off the top of my head, but Vision also really cool there. Just a larger version of Nightcrawler. If you have any version of cost reduction that gets played, or like Pegasus Project, and you're able to play Vision early, you pretty much win the game. And then Heimdall for just the end game. You have to really be careful with Heimdall. Heimdall can win you the left 2 locations, but it also means that your opponent can just put like something small on the right location and guarantee win that one most of the time with Heimdall. So you have to be careful with it, but I think it's strong. I do like Storm in this one too, because you could lock down a location and then you can move everything into it later, so you can guarantee the win there. I think that's nice. And this is a really obnoxious list if they see everything they want to do. Again, a lot of cute combos with what you're doing with it. And I think you guys have probably played against this list. I don't like the playstyle a lot myself, and I think it's very strong, and the only thing is that you have to be on top of it. You have to make sure you do your sequences right, and it really depends on what locations you see and what you put in what location a lot of times. And that's the only inconsistent part about it, but by and large, I think it's very, very strong there. And lastly, we do have the aforementioned Devil Dinosaur list right here. And I still think this is just by and large the strongest list in the game. It's just does some really good stuff, and then sometimes you get Moon Girl into Devil Dinosaur, and then you just have 2 5/17s in your hand. So that's really strong. You're able to have some room to be flexible with your opponent. If you are ever a little bit afraid of Shang-Chi, you can instead run one of these 2 drops. You can add a armor if you want. I think that would be helpful there. Storm is nice too to lock down a location, and then if you're winning that location, for example, if you put Collector down there with Storm, you're probably pretty good, because anytime you draw more cards from not your deck, which you can do with Agent 13, Mantis, Cable, Sentinel, Moon Girl, White Queen, all of these cards let you draw cards. Moon Girl lets you usually give like a +3 on Collector, which is nice. And you can pretty much lock the location down, win that, and then use Devil Dinosaurs to win, go really hard on another location and just kind of win from there. So that's all very strong. We're running American Chavez again to make our deck 1 card shorter to make it easier for us to get the Moon Girl combo. And sometimes you don't see Moon Girl, and that's fine. But I think the deck is strong. And Devil Dinosaur is just generically one of the best cards. And also, like in a deck where your kind of MO is to just keep drawing cards and keep having access to more and more cards, I think it's very, very strong there. So there might be some other, I think this is a pretty basic list for it, but very strong at the same time. If you want to remove any of these cards, Killmonger is more of just a meta pick, honestly, but I think the rest is pretty solid there. So that is my tier list for you guys. Let me know what decks that I missed from this tier list that I should be adding there. Generically, if I didn't mention it, it's probably tier 2 or lower. I think the top 3 here are the top 3 you kind of want to talk about. I didn't really, one last thing too is that I didn't really make a on play. I kind of just lumped that together with Jubilee. I think Jubilee is just like the best on play deck anyways. So, but there are some other Odin on play ones as well that if you want to talk about, and same thing, I lumped it together with Infinaut as well, just to make it really concise on all these cards kind of have a lot of synergies together if you can't already tell, and you should probably be running them as well. So anyways, that is going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And let me know what you're looking forward to in Pool 3, and I'll see you guys next time.